Hey everybody, welcome to the real United States and welcome to Chesapeake City in Maryland. Now, this is another one of those small town Americana pieces because as of the 2010 census, this town had 673 people. So a very, very small town. To make it even more interesting, the town is now South Chesapeake City and North Chesapeake City. And that is because this body of water runs through the center of it. Now, for those of you who aren't from this area, this body of water is extremely historically important. Although if you look on the map, it's going to call it Black Creek. This is, in fact, the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal, or simply the C&D Canal. Now, the C&D Canal was one of those brainstorms that happened to a group of businessmen who formed the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal Corporation. And construction, although it had several false starts, started in 1824. So about 48 years after we became a nation, roughly, or after the Declaration of Independence, really, this canal started construction, and it took until 1829 and $2.5 million, which in that time was a whole lot of money. It was the most expensive, largest civil engineering project in the nation up to that time. It's 14 miles long, and what it does is it connects the headwaters of the Chesapeake Bay with the top of the Delaware Bay and cuts off about 230 miles it would take you to go around to get from one to the other. So freight coming in ships from overseas that would come in past Cape May would have to go another 230 miles by sail power. Well, now they could come just straight across here. So at the time that this was dug, it was 66 feet wide at the top, 36 feet wide at the bottom, and only 10 feet deep. Well, ships kept getting bigger. And so it was expanded and expanded and expanded. And the last expansion took place in the 1960s, and into 1970, it's now 450 feet wide and 36 feet deep. So even a super tanker can come through here. Now, speaking of super tankers, 10 years after, roughly, I think it was, well, first of all, 10 years after this was built in 1829 when it was finished. This town was originally called the Village of Bohemia, something that touches my heart, being a Bohemian. But because this was cut right through the center of town, 10 years later in 1839 they renamed the village simply to the city to Chesapeake City. The two parts of the town were cut off from one another until they eventually built a drawbridge right here. And that was cool until a freighter ran into it and destroyed it. I think that was in 1842. And then the current bridge that you see was built. Well, the thing is the bridge is said to be so tall for super tankers and other ships that people coming into town don't actually come into town. They're on the bridge long before they get to town. So the growth and the economy of Chesapeake City sort of stalled and died. And that's why it's only 670 people to this day. And mostly it's cottage industry, small shops and restaurants. One of which is this lovely place right here, the Bayard House, which has, in my opinion, I'm going to get in trouble for this, the best crab cake in Maryland. Absolutely brilliant. We just had our lunch there. Delightful, folks. Hope to get back here in a few weeks. Gorgeous food. This is one of the oldest buildings in Chesapeake City. It's not the oldest building, by the way. And all brick structure. So this is from that era in the early 1820s. And perhaps in a future video we'll give you a little more history about that. But this stretch of water, this 14-mile stretch of water, completely changed the economic development in Maryland because it allowed products to come in and out so much faster. So now, again, it's just a sleepy little town along this very important piece of waterway. And unfortunately, we don't have any freighters to show you today. But trust me, this is still an industrial, commercial waterway, as well as a recreational one. Now, when it was originally built, it was built with a series of 4 locks. In the 20th century, as it was widened and widened, it was eventually questioned if it could not be an open waterway. And they discovered that through engineering calculations that it could be. And so now they did away with the locks. Now there's quite a good current here between these two bodies of water. I'd say there's probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 knots of current here. You can correct me if you know better. But there is a good current that comes through here, but you don't have to wait for locks. The locks at the time, too, interestingly enough, were not gravity-fed locks. They had a steam-powered engine that ran this pump mechanism thing. Here, I got a picture of it, a drawing I'll show you. And this thing actually would lift water up into the lock to fill it. I don't know at what point in history they decided to start using gravity-fed locks, but this was a lock that was used here on the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal at the time. So obviously much more practical, much more efficient, much faster by making it an open waterway. So as you can see, let's swing around here a little bit. Just look up at some of these beautiful old houses that were here. They're now, like I say, largely cottage businesses. Just very, very quaint little place. It just, like I say, it's a very small town Americana. And this is south that you're looking at right now, south Chesapeake City. And across the waterway, also another high-end, lovely waterfront restaurant right over there where they actually have dockage. You can pull right up with your boat and dock and go straight into the restaurant. And that's north Chesapeake City. I don't know if the folks that live here have any sort of friendly rivalry between north and south. I would doubt it, but you never know. Sometimes people have those things are just fun. But again, a very small, quiet community. And we're only about 2 hours from Washington, D.C., and probably only 45 minutes from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But just so peaceful in just such a short distance. So that tells you something about how our country is actually structured. Once you leave the city, things change very rapidly. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed your short visit here to Chesapeake City, Maryland, and to the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal on this beautiful, sunny, fall November day. If you got questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. I love hearing from all of you. I really do. I try to get back to everybody I can. If you're new here, hey, welcome. Please consider picking subscribe. Come along for the adventure, because we've got lots more to show you. And as always, thank you for watching.